I have a ministry called the Binji Cooperative. Binji is the Ugandan word for abundance. And it was based on Yeshua said, I've come that they might have life and have it abundantly. Now, a lot of times, Bill talked about it today, sometimes we think of abundance, so that means lots of money and big houses and stuff. But I know some people who live in some huts with dirt floors and all that still understand something about abundance in the Lord. And so everybody asked, how did this start? This young man on the left is Musumba. He was in tourism and hotel school in Uganda, and he earned a smartphone as an award for a class, which opened up the internet. He came across a young lady that told him about a business trainer named Danny Johnson, D-A-N-I, Johnson, Christian business trainer, and he found a whole community on Facebook. Well, I've gone to her training since 2010. I've taken my son since 2013, and somewhere along the way, Musumba, that's my son there, and the tall guy holding me short. They connected on Facebook and began to talk. And my son shared with me later, because Musumba said so many people would accept their friend request but never talk. And I asked Nathaniel, why did you respond? And he said, I remember in Proverbs 21:13, whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. You want effective prayer life, folks? Listen to the cries of the poor. And so they started talking, and he said, Mom, I wish you'd connect with him. He's a Christian. I was like, no, who knows what they want? And he's going, well, Mom, his mom's a Bible teacher like you are. I wish you really would. And he pressured. And so finally, right after Sukkot 2018, I was like, okay, I'll connect with him. And that's what started this. Found out Fazira, that's his mother on the right, was raised Muslim at an early age, married off, and had 5 children. The 5th child was an infant and was very sick. And they walked 4 miles in the town carrying the baby. But in Uganda, there is no public health care. If you don't have money, sorry. And they got to the hospital, and the hospital said, you don't have money. They turned them away. And walking back the 4 miles, the baby died in her arms. Husband went on ahead. When she got home, found out he had left. And that was like 15 years ago. He abandoned them. And sometime after that, somebody led her to the Lord, and she became a Christian. And when she came wholeheartedly. And she changed all her children's names from the tribal names to Christian names. Fazira is a Muslim name, but the Lord said, do not change your name because I'm going to use you to reach Muslims. And so she started reading and studying. Every weekend, she would walk those 4 miles into town to the hospital, and she'd pray about which ward to go in. She'd go from bed to bed praying for people. When I finally went over there, I got a warm reception because so many people knew this woman as a praying woman. She's precious, precious saint. And somewhere along the way, about the time we met, they had been reading their Bible, and she was like, I need somebody to teach me more. And so she started praying, Lord, send me somebody to teach me. And her mom. We started doing online Bible studies. And we do video calls, and they would ask questions. And the way I teach, I don't just say, do this. I say, Scripture says this, this, and this, and this. Therefore, this is my understanding. I explain why I believe what I believe and such. And we studied. And they said, Mom, they call me Mom Eleanor. Mom, you need to come to Uganda and teach here. And I was like, oh, goodness. No, I've got all these chronic pain issues. And I was just, I can't do that. And but I said, oh, please come. And finally, after about 2 months or so of doing Bible studies, one day I got off the phone with him. We do video calls. And I just looked at my son and I started weeping. I said, I want to go. I want to go. The Lord just put in my heart to go. And so that's how this thing started. So I ended up going to Uganda. Just to give you a little idea, Uganda is over there in East Africa. The southern border of Uganda is Lake Victoria, which is the 2nd largest freshwater lake in the world after Lake Superior here in the U.S. It has a population of 43 million. The median age is 15. Y'all, that tells you there's lots and lots and lots and lots of kids. Okay? Life expectancy is only 53, Average woman has 6 children. Infant mortality 6.1%. So they lose little ones. Um, 38% live on less than $1.25 a day income. Poverty rates are higher in the rural areas, and 84% of the population is rural. So that tells you there's a bunch of people that live on way less than $1 a day, because the average is $1.25. 57% of the adults have HIV. Over half of the adult population. Part of that is because of the culture, the promiscuity, and all that is an accepted part of the culture is devastating. That's one reason there's the median age is so young, because they don't live long when you have so many people that have such a deadly disease that turns into full-blown AIDS. Interesting thing, only 4% of the roads are paved in Uganda, so that means there's lots of dirt roads. And they're not gravel, they're dirt, which means in rainy season they are mud, and makes it interesting to travel. But the country is beautiful. Beautiful, lush fields. We're in the parts where I am located. It's tea plantations on the left, sugar cane on the right, pasture land. They're growing corn and maize. They call it maize over there. Just it's beautiful countryside. Like I said, they're on Lake Victoria, so there's a fishing industry there on the water. I think I was talking to that tilapia is native to Lake Victoria, and so it's not farm raised. It's natural. It's good. It's real good. And so it's a beautiful country. The Nile River starts out of Lake Victoria, flows 4,400 miles or so north to the Mediterranean. So that water you're looking at there is probably now in the Mediterranean Sea. Just blows me away. Beautiful country. But Proverbs says the poor man's farm may produce much food, but injustice sweeps it all away. There's a lot of corruption and all that is just part of the culture. You assume you're going to have to bribe the police officers. You assume that you're going to have to bribe to get paperwork done, or things like that. And a lot of times there's a lot of injustice because of that. If people don't care, if you don't have the money, you say too bad. But the people are just so wonderful. I work out in rural villages. Calero Village is 3.5 miles off the nearest paved road. You have to have 4-wheel drive to get there. And the same Lord is Lord of all, and richly blesses all who call him. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. And that's not just in America or Uganda. That's in Brazil, Russia, China, wherever. The Father. Somebody was talking about how many races are. I said basically in Scripture there's one race. It's called Adam's race, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. So now I don't speak Ugandan, so I always had to have a translator. Out in the villages, almost nobody speaks English. In the cities, you do encounter people who do speak English, but out in the villages, I always had a translator. So that day, Eve is you see me standing back there. Eve is this Summer's younger sister. She was translating for me that day. And the thing I really stress is I'm not here to teach you American culture or Ugandan culture. I'm here to teach you God's culture. And because there's things about American culture that are good, but they're not biblical. There's things about Ugandan culture that are good or bad, but they're not biblical. And the guideline here is where we need to go. So I would start with that. And you see there's the kids after they got used to me, they call people with this color skin out there, they call us Mzungus. And some of these kids had never seen anybody this color. And so sometimes they were either terrified or they were fascinated. It's usually one or the other. And it was interesting there. And like I said, children everywhere. For example, the little girl on the right with the pink skirt, she's wiping her nose. Her name is Dorcas. She was one that was fascinated with me. She'd want to sit in my lap when I was there. And she was going to go with me. She said she was going to get in my suitcase and travel back with me. And I said, but what about your mom? Oh, she'll be fine. She was determined. She's like 5 years old. And but she cried when I left and such. It was so sweet. Um, and Bukayi Village is one of the places I would go and teach. Sister Irene is the pastor's wife. She's also a school teacher. She's translating for me that day. The people would be so hungry to hear. And they would listen attentively. Another place I went, Numangawe. This is a church of Uganda. This is like an Episcopal church. But again, because of Fazira's reputation as a woman of prayer, I was welcome here. The kids, you see there's windows in the church building, but window openings, but no windows. And those kids, this was the first time I was there. I was talking to somebody afterwards, and the kids were peeking in the window from outside, kind of, wondering. And I went over the window and leaned over and talked to them, and they realized I was okay. So when I went outside, they mobbed me. And noticed like they're hanging on me there. So I've gotten to go there a couple of times. This is when I went back. And then the kids were even more. I'm in that picture there on the right. You have to say that's my Where's Waldo picture because it's like I'm the little pink face in there. But they just were fascinated with me. And there's a large group of widows there too that I got to minister to because there's some things that are in common. I'm a widow. Whether I'm an American widow or a Ugandan widow, we have some things that we share in common. So we would go. In Calero, we were looking for ways to try to help people. They tend to look a lot of times at Americans, which even the poorest American is wealthy by comparison, but they want to look to Americans to be the supply. And this was the thing to overcome with the culture, to say, I'm no different than you. I know this is a different color. I speak a different language, but I need a Savior too. I'm worthy of death just the same as you are. This color has nothing to do with the language I speak, and it was hard for them, and to say that Yahweh is your provider. And one of the things when I put out, I just started a Facebook page when I went, because when I just went. I don't have some big organization supporting me. It's just Lord told me to go. And so I started saving money, and some people found out, some people helped with some of the expenses. But I started a Facebook page, and I was, kind of following my journey. And when there were needs, and what allowed this, when I was teaching in Calero, and I said, this is God's culture. And I said, don't take my word for it. You need to check in your Bible any things that I teach to see if it matches up here. And Brother Christopher, the congregational leader, he said, but Mom, we don't have Bibles. And in a congregation, there was about 70 people that day. And I said, who has a Bible? One person, y'all. How many of you have more than one Bible yourself? Probably almost every one of us. And I was just like, it just blew me away. And so I got on the Facebook page and I said, folks, this isn't right. These people have no Bibles. They want to know about God, but they have no Bibles. So people started sending me money. I found out I could buy them. That year we could get them for $9 a piece. I had people sending money for a Bible. I think y'all sent some to help get some Bibles and all. And we ended up being able to buy a bunch of Bibles. And we had actually a surplus. So we said, what else can we do to help the people? And so we also were able to buy 27 doe goats, and for non-farmers, does are females. And we gave them to the widows' families and some of the poor families and such there in the congregation to give them something to help be a little more self-sustaining. And the first three, Zaina there on the left, and then Rabina with the pink thing, and then Adisa, the one that makes me look tall. They're all widows. Zam, the tall lady, she was an abandoned wife. She was one of like 3 wives, and she would carry her little youngest son, Abasa. I don't know if you can see his legs are about this big around. He was born. He can't speak. He's not all there mentally, and he can't walk. She lives over a mile away from the meeting place every Friday. she would carry that little boy to the meeting place. I watched her do that. And she would carry him, and she'd set him down on the grass mat, and I'd see her. She arranges his legs, and she wiped the spittle from his mouth and such. Just such love. And one day we were talking with her, and she was saying when she gave birth to him, the other two wives, they said, "Oh, you're cursed because you had this deformed child and all." She said, "But I know God gave me a possum." And so she has been faithful to love that little boy. That's her youngest. She's got some older children, but she would always carry him. And she's just a super sweet woman. She doesn't speak English, but she's missing some teeth, but she's got this biggest smile. And she has the gift of hospitality. I'll tell you more about that, too. So she got one of the goats. And I have to tell you a story before I tell you this. We went to help widows, but Richard lived next door to Zaria, one of the widows, and they took the same day we gave out the doe goats. I had this idea of like, what if we could connect people over here with widows over there who could maybe help sponsor a little bit to at least help them get some basic food. So I was going to go around to different widows' houses and take pictures there. They were taking me around. Well, Zaria lives next door to this man, Richard, and now you have to understand, we're 3.5+ miles off the nearest paved road, and even from the paved road, there's not many people this color around. And so Richard was not part of the congregation. So when I walk into the yard, he was like, "What? Where did this Muzungu come from?" So I took pictures of Zaria's house next door, and Musumba started talking to him. And it turned out Richard, he's an anomaly. Usually it's the men that abandon the family. His wife had abandoned the family because of poverty. They have 5 children. He had stayed, but he was struggling. He couldn't earn enough to feed them. About 25 cents a day would feed a person, just a basic, nothing fancy meal, just something to fill you up. Well, he's got 5 children, so even if you made $1.25 a day, that eats everything up. And he was struggling to find work. And so Musumba said, "Why don't you take his picture too?" And he indicated that'd be okay. And so I did. And I don't know if you can see the expression on his face. It was just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And as I was leaving, the little children came up. And Yesel, the next to the youngest, the one that's right to Richard's left in that group picture, I happened to look down at his leg and I went, "Oh my goodness." Now, I didn't do a real close-up of it because it was really gross. Found out that 4 days before, accidentally spilled boiling water on little Yesel's leg. And it was literally raw pink flesh. The brown skin on top was just falling off in hunks. And this little boy was walking around, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness." I'm thinking, I told Miss Summer, "Go get the first aid kit," because I'd brought oils and ointments and such. And I'm praying, what do I have for burns? So as he comes back, I had lavender oil. This was great. So I drizzled that on, and I had a tube of antibiotic ointment. And I had some little cotton pads. So I put the lavender oil on, and I gently spread a little bit of antibiotic ointment with a cotton pad. I didn't want to touch it because it was just, it was like raw hamburger meat. It was just awful. And the little boy, he was watching me, but he stood there. He didn't cry or whimper while I was putting that ointment on. And afterwards, I prayed for him, and Musum is translating as I pray. And then to Richard, I gave him the tube of ointment and some pads, and I told him once a day, try to, put the ointment on, and said, and try to keep it clean. Look, he's barefoot, it's dirty, everywhere. And so we just had a few minutes, and then we went on. Well, 10 days later was the next time I was in that village, and that was the day we brought the Bibles. And we had enough for each family. We had like 30 families and 30 Bibles. And we handed those out, and, we take it for granted, but, Moses told the Israelites, "Take to heart all these words I testify among you today, for they are not idle words to you, because they are your life." This word doesn't just give life, it is life. And it was really, and so I knew to get that to them. And I wrote out for them, you see little pieces of paper stuck in there. I took time to write. I told them, read a chapter of Proverbs every day. And I'd talked to them a lot about speaking life, but we were just talking about praying with this couple up here about life and death are in the power of the tongue. They that live it shall eat its fruit. I was like, to speak life over your children. So I gave them some blessings. The husband's blessing for the wife from Proverbs 31. The traditional blessing of wives for the husband from Psalm 112. And I pulled verses from Proverbs and Psalms to read over the children. I said, read it at least once a week. Every day would be even better. Because I knew this would be speaking life into their families. We're seeing the fruit of that. Because Yeshua also described this as seed. And I know it's good seed. And I'm dropping stuff out of there. And so we handed those out. And we had about 8 or 10 Bibles left. And that day, Richard was there. And he had his little boy Yasel with him sitting on the bench. And when we handed out to the congregation members, they said, who else needs a Bible? Richard leaped to his feet and he said, I must have a Bible. And does he even look like the same guy? It was so different. He is now a faithful member, and we gave him a Bible. To fill you in on the story, this didn't come out till later. This was my last time there before I was going back to the States. I'd been there 4 weeks, and so it was after I'd left, and when the ministry team was going on a different time. Richard pulled Musumba aside, and he said, I need to tell you something. I had not been able to find enough work to feed the family, and I was so discouraged. And then when Yasel burned his leg, all I could think of was like infection. He'd lose his leg or die or something. And he said, I was at the end, and I had purposed in my heart that I was just going to desert the family the same way their mom did. He said, and then Mom Eleanor walked into my house. And she cared. She prayed. She gave me medicine. She cared about my son. And he said when we left that day, he said, who is this God that would send somebody from the other side of the world to come to my house, to care for my child, to pray for my child? Who is this God who would do that for me? I have to know him. And he does. I love it. He practiced his English so that he could make a video to thank me personally instead of him to go through a translator. And I just so appreciate him. And he really is a new creation in Messiah. Totally different. And he said that day, he told Musumba, he said, you tell Mom Eleanor she thinks she came for all these different people, but God sent her to Uganda to speak to me. It blows me away that I would have the privilege of being the hands and the voice of my Father to this person. Y'all, you never know who that person is. It might be the person next door. It might be a stranger in the store. But there's people that are hungry and who need to know that God says, I see you, I hear your prayer, and I care.
This is Eleanor Wyatt, president of the Binji Cooperative. Thank you for joining me for this presentation. I look forward to connecting with you on Facebook, where you can follow current needs and prayer requests. And also, I look forward to hearing from you. If you wish to donate, we have several ways. And if you want to donate for specific purposes, please let us know. We need help with educating orphans, especially the girls, but all of the children. We need housing for some of the widows. We need housing for orphans. We need Bibles to continue to share with people as we evangelize out in the villages. We need help with automotive maintenance, gasoline, and continued things like that. There's a multitude of needs. I invite you to reach out to me. Send me an email. Let me know what the Father's speaking to you about. And if He's telling you to go, I'd love to chat with you about that too. I pray that the Lord would bless you and keep you and make His face to shine upon you. I pray that He would be gracious unto you and give you peace. Thank you so much, and God bless.